Democrats and the liberal media are continuing to twist words by former President Trump. They claim he wanted to see former Congresswoman and Harris surrogate Liz Cheney shot. He was actually making a point. Actually, you know who makes this point really well? Is Bill Maher. He really does. Okay, so Trump was making a point about Washington politicians who are just fine with sending American troops into war. The problem is, on the left, they have a narrative that is tough because they don't often support those, have the backs of those they send into war. Vice President Kamala Harris seized on the false narrative.
Anyone who wants to be president of the United States who uses that kind of violent rhetoric is clearly disqualified and unqualified to be president. Representative Cheney is a true patriot who has shown extraordinary courage in putting country above party.
The liberal media, of course, right there to help out.
Donald Trump calling for Liz Cheney being shot in the face.
This is not normal. This is not acceptable. This is so dangerous.
Dementia or what? What's going on?
No, I wish it were dementia.
I fled communism. This is exactly what communists do. Yep. They shoot their opponent.
At what point does a Republican member of Congress call out Trump for this kind of language? I just don't get it. I just don't get it. It's outrageous.
Well, here is exactly what the former president said, complete with full context.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face. You know, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, let's send 10,000 troops right into the mouth of the enemy. But she's a stupid person. And I used to I'd have meetings with a lot of people, and she always wanted to go to war with people. So whether it's her, whether it's Dick, I was surprised a little bit with Dick Cheney. I didn't know him at all. I only had essentially the 1 or 2 phone calls, and it was only a call saying, thank you very much for doing that for Scooter Libby. That was nice. And Scooter Libby, by the way, was beyond that. He couldn't believe that it happened. Nobody would do it. They should have done that for him years before. But I was a little surprised because I actually thought that Dick Cheney would go with me over his daughter, and he didn't. And you know what? I understand it. It's your daughter, and you go. But she's a bad person.
Trump campaign senior advisor Tim Murtaugh summed it up this way.
It's plain for anyone to see, if you just watch the videotape, what President Trump was talking about was how would Liz Cheney view it if she were the one who was deployed to war zones instead of the sons and daughters of Americans that she has always voted to deploy and send to their deaths while she sat in Washington, D.C. with her feet up in her office there.
Senator Lindsey Graham also laced into Cheney, saying her backing of VP Harris has made her totally irrelevant.
You're telling me you're pro-life and you want this lady to be president who believes in abortion up to the moment of birth? You're telling me you believe in a strong military when she advocated getting out of Afghanistan, the last person in the room with Biden? You're telling me you believe in energy independence and you want her to be president, stopping oil and gas drilling? So, Liz Cheney, don't listen to her.
Jason Chaffetz, now Fox News contributor and former Republican congressman of Utah. Look, you've seen late stages of campaigns. You win.
Right.
So I don't know, 48 hours, the last 96 hours, how much of it matters? I mean, outside that zone, we saw the president serving up fries.
Right.
At McDonald's, outside the last 4 days. How much of it matters, and when does the clock just stop and voters say, I'm done, I'm going to go vote?
A lot of people make up their mind when they actually go and vote in person, and there's a lot of people, millions of them, vote in person. But the problem is your core thesis has to be consistent with the truth. And that's Kamala Harris's core problem. Everything she talks about, she's trying to say, oh, I'm pro-fracking in Pennsylvania. We know she's not. She promised she was. She says she's going to be tough on the border, running ads that she's going to be tough on the border.
That's not true.
She knows that's not true. She's going to. Donald Trump will start World War III. The beginnings of World War III feel like it's happening in the Middle East under her watch. So you go right down the list, your core thesis, if it's not consistent, you're not going to convince people. People are smarter than that.
And so that really needs to be part of the closing argument, I would think, but it's been usurped. Her surrogates have pulled the rug out from under her. And look, with Donald Trump, he said exactly all the things that you're saying. And then his words got twisted around Liz Cheney just this week. And I'm wondering how much it matters. So talk show host Bill Maher, I just mentioned moments ago. Let's take a look at what he says.
I woke up today to the headline that Trump had called for a firing squad for Liz Cheney. And this is what I really don't like about the media. No, he didn't. He did not. You don't have to move me to not like Donald Trump. No, of course, he expresses himself horribly. He has to add she's a stupid person because he's a moron. Trump knows what but just so, you know, just don't lie to me. I don't like Donald Trump. Don't lie to me and tell me he wants in front of a firing squad.
The Huffington Post quoted it this way: Bill Maher defends Donald Trump's comment about Liz Cheney. Exactly what hippies always said, is the quote.
Exactly. You have to remember, 2/3 of this country believes the country's on the wrong track. I think as long as...
More than that, it's like 72%.
Yeah, as long as Donald Trump will continue to beat the drum on, Kamala Harris broke it, and I will make it better.
I'll fix it.
Yes, I'll fix it. I had 4 years. The economy was better. Immigration's broken. I will fix that. And we can get this country back together. Just say and talk and remind people on those things, and I think he wins and wins handily.
That's where he started when we took the top of his comments in Pennsylvania and really reiterating all those areas that need urgent attention, and you think that works. Biden may have given the campaign another headache, meaning Kamala Harris's campaign, the woman he picked to be his vice president. Anyway, his comment about Trump and Republicans yesterday. Watch this.
There's one more thing Trump and his Republican friends want to do. They want another giant tax cut for the wealthy. Now, I know some of you guys are tempted to think it's macho guy. I'll tell you what, man. When I was in Scranton, we used to have a little trouble going down the plot once in a while from Greenwich. But I'm serious. These are the kind of guys you like to smack in the ass.
I mean, wow. Grandpa needs a nap. Former President Obama's top speechwriter says Joe Biden shouldn't be campaigning because he's become a liability.
If I was Joe Biden, and I knew, look, his legacy obviously is at stake in this election, and he is the president of the United States, got a lot of work to do as president, I would probably look at the numbers, I would look at the race and say, I'm going to focus on being president over the next couple of days. And that's probably the best, that's the best thing he can do for not just the Harris campaign, but himself and his legacy too.
Oh, Jon Favreau just calling the facts.
Well, I think... I wonder, does Joe Biden really want Kamala Harris to win? I mean, I think it's a legitimate question to ask. There is a point where you just have to say, you know what, you're not the nominee. And I think he's terribly frustrated by that. I think he thinks he's the only person that can beat Donald Trump. He's not on the ticket. He's very frustrated. He's a little confused and has been for some time. And Kamala Harris is surrounded by people from Mark Cuban to the Cheneys. Are you kidding? Can you imagine if you're a Democrat and you got the Cheneys? You're looking at the Cheneys thinking they're that does not make sense.
Democrats would just eviscerate the name Dick Cheney.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with you. I hadn't thought of it that way. But look, even Donald Trump a few minutes ago on the stump in Pennsylvania was saying, where's Joe? We know where Joe is. Joe was so busy at the time that she was giving her speech at the Ellipse. It was supposed to be her big post, January 6th, beat up on Donald Trump and MAGA supporters and so on and so forth. But it turned out to be him on a Zoom taking her down by, saying terrible things about Trump supporters, calling them garbage.
And there were 2 other times where Kamala Harris was doing something nationally on television, only to have Joe Biden come on television and kind of usurp her. He's the president. You got to take the president. But again, core themes matter. Kamala Harris has nothing. She doesn't have the economy. She doesn't have issues.
Jon Favreau actually had a good point here. Who's running the country if he's trying to also run her campaign? Like, why isn't Joe just not doing anything?
We've been asking this question for years. Who's really running the country?
I know you have.
Yeah.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.